How's it going, everybody? So today we're going to do a reaction video to a channel by the name of American WASP with Dichotomy Business. Apparently this guy saw my most recent video, Are Liberals Really the Only Hope That Leftists Have? It's titled something like that. And he really liked it and tended to agree with a lot of what I had to say, which I find flattering. So he suggested that I do a little reaction to one of his videos. And so he sent me his first video called What is a WASP and Why Should You Care? So I went ahead and actually watched the video twice because upon first reaction to it, I misinterpreted a lot of what he was saying. And there are a couple framing devices he uses early on that I take a little bit of an issue with. I'm going to point them out, and but regardless, we're going to use them and entertain the framing throughout the whole video anyway, because he actually does make a lot of good points, even if I wouldn't personally use these kind of framing devices myself. The way it's used in this particular video is actually kind of interesting. So yeah, without further ado, and I'll point them out as we go along, we're going to go ahead and make myself smaller here. And just a little heads up, I had the video sped up just a little bit so that way get through just a little quicker. But yeah, let's go ahead and get this thing started. Let me put it in my ears real quick. I need a new headset really badly. Let's go.
Welcome to the inaugural episode of American WASP, where we all agree you don't get change in America by asking nicely.
Yeah. So this guy claims himself to be a progressive, and we actually had a conversation before this, and it was great. It was fruitful. We actually agree on a lot of things. We both follow progressive media, and I think we overall believe in the same goals, like furthering leftism and progressivism, and we don't care about drama, we care about arguments. And yeah, the only nitpick I guess I would have with this setup is it looks like a, I guess, you know, I want to put it nicely, it looks like a conspiracy video. You got the E Pluribus Unum behind the American flag here. It's almost like I could be watching a video about the Illuminati right now. But nitpicks aside, that's irrelevant to the substance within this video.
I am your host, Dichotomy Business, New England's favorite white Anglo-Saxon Protestant living in Southern California. The purpose
West Coast, Best Coast
of American WASP is to explain the social values and political views of the most powerful tribe in American history. So let's start this very first episode by answering the obvious questions. What is a WASP? And why should you care? Imagine, if you can, an anthropologic mosaic featuring panels for every major American tribe you can think of and their related subgroups. African Americans, Asian Americans, Mexican Americans, every kind of immigrant, Muslims, Jews, Roman Catholics, Irish Catholics, the LGBTQ plus communities. The list goes on.
So, describing all these demographics and groups as tribes is, I mean, I understand the framework, but for me, I have never been one to ascribe, you know, characteristics to demographics, and I don't really view them as monoliths. But in this video, you're going to see that WASP, which is White Anglo-Saxon Protestant, is going to be criticized as a tribe, as a monolith overall. But the way that this group is described in the video is what I find interesting. Carrying on.
The least community-oriented tribe on that mosaic is without question the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. If America represents the emergence of individualism in human history, as so many historians agree that it does, we WASPs are the best Americans because we WASPs epitomize American individualism. Or at least we'd like to think we do. What you'll soon find out is that that obsession with individualism derives from WASPs failing more than any other American tribe at the social art of empathy.
Yes, absolutely. And he's talking about like the widest, wealthiest, portion of American society. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Like the absence of empathy is something that I have railed on before in my videos, and I couldn't agree more with that.
The main reason why WASP struggle so much with empathy is what you already know about them. They are, we are, the most privileged and powerful tribe in American society. And to be perfectly honest, we deserve to be.
Now, this is at this part of the video, when I first watched this, I was just like, what does he mean by this? Like, what exactly, like, what do you mean we deserve to be? Like, exactly. That kind of threw me for a loop, and I started, like, second-guessing reacting to this.
After all, we founded this country. We've run this country. We own this country.
This was a little bit menacing to me. This completely threw me for a loop. What I assume he's doing here is roping in what would be, far right-minded people in, this like a sense of like comfort, because this rhetoric is very much nationalistic, and I don't agree with it being used as a framing device because it could potentially turn off a lot of progressive-minded people because, sure, founded this country, yes. Run this country the entire history, yeah. Own this country, yeah. But that kind of really turns off a whole lot of progressive-minded people because just because white Anglo-Saxon Protestants have been at the top of society for generations at this point when it comes to America. Like, all that has been at the expense and the suppression and oppression of the marginalized groups or tribes that Dieter mentioned earlier.
The rest of you are just tourists. You didn't know that?
Yeah, that's, like I said, kind of.
Ironic, isn't it, that the most powerful tribe in American history just so happens to be the least tribal? Something to keep in mind.
Yeah, this is going to be harped on throughout the video, actually. Not very, yeah, we'll get there.
A quick note about empathy, since that's the social concept more frequently used these days than it has been since, I would argue, the civil rights movement. The most widely used cliche to define empathy is walk a mile in my shoes, which works fine. But I prefer to phrase empathy as an acknowledgement of ignorance, because that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
I have no idea what it's like to be you, just like you have no idea what it's like to be me. The reason I have no idea what it's like to be you and you have no idea what it's like to be me is that we are all prisoners of our own personal experience.
100%, yes.
That is what I'd like to call a Dieter decree. Over the course of this show, I'll frequently revisit 3 types of foundational insights relevant to understanding someone's worldview: Dieter decrees, Dieter dichotomies, and Dieter threes. This very first Dieter decree, we are all prisoners of our own personal experience, is crucial to understanding the obliviousness of the American WASP to the plight of those less fortunate. A tremendous anecdote that perfectly encapsulates the American WASP self-image as the founders and, by extension, the proprietors of America is Robert De Niro's highly underappreciated 2006 film, The Good Shepherd.
Haven't seen it.
Which explores elite East Coast WASPs establishing the Central Intelligence Agency following World War II. There's a scene between Matt Damon and Joe Pesci wherein Pesci's character notes that, culturally speaking, he and his fellow Italian Americans are known for having a strong commitment to family and to church. The Irish have their homeland, the Jews have their traditions, and African Americans have their music. He then asks Damon, "What about your people? What do you have?" To which Damon responds, "The United States of America. The rest of you are just visiting." A lifestyle anecdote that might help explain what I like to call the superficial spirituality of the American WASP is that the Protestant work ethic implicitly teaches that material success brings us closer to God.
Yeah. When you think about it, yeah, this is pretty damn accurate. Like, when it comes to the elites in society, their mindset, it's not about genuine happiness. It's about winning. It's about materialism. It doesn't exactly mean anything. Even if I don't agree with like the sectioning off like various groups of people and tribes as mentioned in the video, there's a reason for it in this video.
So instead of going on mission trips like true believers, we WASPs write checks to churches And before we chow down on some lobster, pray for all of the people getting screwed over by unregulated capitalistic globalism so we can enjoy more guilt-free time at our summer house. That is the ultimate symbol of WASP success, by the way.
I wouldn't say globalism as much as capitalism, but since capitalism is a global force, I mean...
More guilt-free time at our summer house. That is the ultimate symbol of WASP success, by the way. Not your first, but your second home. A Nantucket Country Club conversation between a few New England waspy good old boys might go something like, you got a pool? Cool. I got a view. You got a view? Cool. I got a view. And a dock. And a boat. Oh, you're on the water too? Cool. But you're facing west, right? Because only an idiot would buy waterfront property that doesn't get the sunset. At this point, I should probably acknowledge that I'm describing a pretty specific type of American WASP.
Yeah. Overall, this is very anecdotal. But yeah, just like the way he's describing just the incessant need to one-up each other, like, instead of collectivizing, I guess you could say, is a poisonous mindset, and that's, elaborated on in this video.
And it's because this is the version of the subculture with which I happen to be the most familiar. I'll get into other sub-demographics, most notably the Southern evangelical WASP, soon enough, but for now, I'm talking about the ruling class of America, the elite East Coast male country club WASPs that essentially run the nation, whether it be through direct political power or corporate political power.
Mm-hmm.
As you'll come to see in future episodes, the
white folk
evangelical WASPs are merely manipulated by these country club WASPs to serve their one-percenter in corporate political interests. The great tragedy of the American right. For WASPs with money, because they had satisfied their need to succeed, their new interest becomes the pursuit of perfection. Or more specifically, the pursuit of the appearance of perfection.
Oh yeah. It's all about appearance. It's all about putting on a show, making it seem like you got your shit together.
But what they don't realize is that commitment to the appearance of perfection comes at the expense of individual happiness.
100%.
Because the entire WASP culture is predicated on individualism over collectivism. Understanding this very first Dieter dichotomy, individualism versus collectivism, as it relates to understanding people's worldviews, will prove very useful when I begin to analyze people's politics according to demographic and psychographic data. That's the premise for a future segment called Drugstore Psychology, which will be featured in my next episode, where I diagnose myself. Obviously, the WASP would like to think of himself or herself as an individualist. Remember, we're talking about the least community-oriented subculture in America. Without even realizing it, many East Coast upper crust WASPs are caught in this emotional catch-22 of constantly questioning their self-worth, which contradictorily derives from the opinions of their social competitors. Keep that in mind, because I'm going to be coming back to it in a minute. Now that you know my first Dieter dichotomy, I might as well introduce you to my first Dieter 3. The 3 best ways to see who someone really is. You want to know what someone's truly made of? You want to know what's really important to them, what their greatest fears are? Get them stressed, get them drunk, or watch what they do with their money. Since witnessing the effects of stress and alcohol require a certain level of proximity to the individual, and since the type of WASP we're currently discussing is defined by his wealth anyway, money is the most natural choice of criteria we can use to evaluate the collective conscience of elite East Coast WASPs. Related to understanding someone's values by way of observing their financial decisions is my second Dieter dichotomy, material comfort versus experiential happiness. WASP success is somewhat experiential. Where did you go skiing last Christmas? But predominantly material. The self-made WASP, who didn't inherit his wealth, works to accrue possessions to prove to himself and his brethren that he is successful. But while his need to prove himself to others might produce comfort, it doesn't produce happiness.
It is actually kind of remarkable how many older, mostly white men act like this, like accrue material possessions, just to not so much fulfill themselves, but to one up other older white men that they see as competition. It's actually quite sad. If you're living your entire existence just to impress people that you really don't even really give a shit about.
Because he can never truly trust those whose approval he seeks. Why? Because men like that can't help but compete with their peers. It's a social paradox. Catch-22 I was just talking about.
Social
where
paradox.
In one's pursuit of social approval.
I have actually used this term before, social paradox, in a musical sense. But that's just I digress.
Derives from their standing with their peers, but their peers are also their social adversaries. I'll frequently refer to this social dynamic in the future
Yeah.
as the tough guy complex.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Country club culture is the WASP American experience. Unlike their Catholic equivalents
Yes.
who grew up going to their cousins' birthday parties, first communions, and good old-fashioned Sunday afternoon barbecues after church, like a real community. Type A WASP 1%er men in particular don't have real friends and tend to have increasingly superficial relationships with their...
It's interesting how, like, specific this is, but at the same time it makes sense. And I didn't pick up on that at all my first watch of this. But I wanted to give it its due diligence because I knew there was shit that I was missing.
Immediate family members as they grow older. They play golf and drink at the club, but these guys don't spend time at each other's homes. They don't confide in each other by having deep conversations. Only the most open-minded 1%er WASP would even consider seeing a therapist, much less admit that they see one.
Yeah.
And you can forget about meditation. Believe me, I've tried. The concept of spiritual and...
It's definitely not for everybody. It depends on who you are, but regardless of who you are, if you have any sort of emotional trauma, seek therapy. 100%.
or emotional awareness did not come less naturally to these men. Very often, their emotional scars are actually the motivation for their need to succeed.
Yeah.
More people need to know this. Many super...
If you've spent your entire life trying to please mommy and daddy, you're going to try to please everybody else around you as well.
Successful white men were physically or emotionally abused when they were young.
Yep.
The converse of this behavioral pattern is that 70% of inmates were abused as kids. Of course, chances are that the abused kid who grows up to become a CEO doesn't look a whole lot like the abused kid who grows up to become a criminal.
Yeah. Systemic racism. Right there.
Back to the whitest of white Americans, that lack of emotional self-awareness is the reason why the only thing more important than individual success to a WASP is privacy. Appearances are everything.
Yes.
Vulnerability is weakness. Authenticity, and by extension intimacy, are expendable. My third Dieter dichotomy is the artistic versus athletic divide. The artistic athletic divide helps explain why these men, and very often their spouses, are so obsessed with winning.
Mm-hmm.
In general, America's youth grows up being encouraged to either pursue sports or art, rarely both. And in general, especially if you're a guy, if you're good at sports when you're a kid, you play sports. Pretty much all of these country club WASPs grew up playing competitive sports. Some were decent athletes, but more importantly, their interest in athletics exacerbated their competitive disposition and did not encourage them to balance their early life by pursuing anything creative.
Yeah. Yeah, if you spend your whole life being competitive, like, what use is there in being creative and pursuing any sort of art or music or anything like that? Like, what's in that for you?
And as you will see over the course of this show, if you don't already know, creativity is the domain of empathy. The East Coast elite WASP...
Yes, I love that. I love that. Creativity is the domain of empathy. I love that.
Creativity is the domain of empathy. The East Coast elite WASP is too busy competing to appreciate that self-reflection is the vehicle of self-determinism.
Yes.
But more simply, successful WASPs are less likely than any category of human being to reflect on their approach to life because they experience years of people around them reinforcing the idea that their worldview is the best worldview because that worldview produced material success.
Yeah.
They're white-collar wannabe gangsters like the D-bags you saw play golf with Tony Soprano in the series' 10th episode, A Hit is a Hit. I'll be doing a series on The Sopranos this fall, by the way. If you don't remember, the club members pretend to seriously consider sponsoring Tony for membership to their club so they can ask him all kinds of questions about his gangster life over the course of the round. But they're completely unwilling to share with him anything about an investment opportunity that comes up in the conversation later. Golfing WASPs talk about the market, the latest Fox News political coverage, and sports to a certain extent, but there's usually only a handful of guys in any given WASPy clique that really knows what they're talking about when it comes to sports. Most of them just borrow a quote from an ESPN personality to make it seem like they know about sports.
Same thing goes with politics. Borrowing quotes from Fox News commentators or something that they saw on their Facebook feed. It's like they don't actually care. They just want to show off and pretend that they know more than their peers. And I use that term loosely.
Because real WASPs watch sports. Because WASPs win, baby. At some point, probably without even realizing it, these sociocultural super-competitors gave into the idea that social status and self-worth do not derive from any kind of personal or spiritual journey characterized by exposing oneself to different people, cultures, and experiences. Competition is king. Winning is what matters most. Not loving beating your neighbor.
Yep.
I speculate that were they to be more socially connected to their neighbor by way of some kind of community, they would likely be less oblivious to the societal consequences of their obsession with winning. By the way, Vince Lombardi regretted being known for that tired but elegant oversimplification that winning isn't everything, but it's the only thing. More people need to know that. The problem with this social dynamic is that all of the men I'm talking about are already winners according to society's social standards, but not necessarily according to high society's standards. Since they're now surrounded by people who are just like them, rich, white, wealthy, at one time educated, but neither spiritually nor culturally enlightened, and live just like them, at least 2 huge houses, at least 1 country club membership, usually a boat, a luxurious travel experience once or twice a year, the need to win manifests in a different way. This social context facilitates a behavioral pattern psychologists call groupthink. The social psychological norm that when you group together people of like minds, their views become more extreme and more firmly held.
Yeah. You see how much more extreme Republicans have gotten over the past decade or two? Says a lot. So they're all repeating the exact same things without even thinking. The only thing they're actually thinking is aligning themselves with their peers. You know? And it's funny how, like, even with that, some cracks are starting to show. You see Steven Crowder throwing a fit over the contract stuff with Daily Wire that he was offered. And now there's infighting amongst, like, the biggest figureheads in conservative media. And it's honestly very entertaining to watch. And it also says a whole lot with how much money is thrown around in conservative media, just so they can repeat the propaganda fed to them by their donors, the billionaires.
Right-wing media outlets, Tucker Carlson on Fox News most prolifically, regularly attempt to steal this label to suggest that the left is guilty of falling victim to this kind of anti-intellectualism. But right here and now, and over the course of this show, I'm going to reclaim the term groupthink as characterizing the right, not the left.
I support you 100% in this noble effort. Like, very bold cause, I'm behind it 100%.
That political tactic by them is known as conservative projection.
Oh, yeah.
So to review, according to conservative East Coast WASPs, in the game of life, the scorecard is, no surprise here, money. The best way to show everyone how much money you have is possessions. But while those possessions produce comfort, they do not produce happiness. Lacking the self-awareness to even know that this is one of their core values, elite East Coast WASPs believe, and so do their evangelical counterparts, but they don't experience it as much as their northern cultural cousins because they're simply nowhere near as wealthy, that happiness does not derive from experiences, but rather the comfort and security provided by an abundance of material possessions.
Yep.
My thesis is that WASP culture is the most individualistic culture in America. Well, in 1%er WASP culture, that individualism manifests as materialism. Expensive furniture isn't good enough, it's got to be antique furniture. A big sailboat made of fiberglass isn't as impressive as owning a wooden sailboat because wooden boats cost like 10 times more to maintain. Unless you're a billionaire, usually from New York, you don't necessarily have to own a private jet, but you at least have to have a private jet membership. Because if you don't think $5,000 an hour is worth avoiding those airport security lines, you just don't know how to live. Plus, the best thing about traveling private is, you guessed it, the privacy.
Yeah, that's literally what, yeah.
There's that core value again. The reason why elite East Coast WASPs are so obsessed with privacy is because they don't want others to know how incompetent they are at participating in authentic relationships.
Yeah, like, this makes me think immediately of, like, Elon Musk. He's such a public figure and wants to be well-liked by everybody. But when his privacy is even remotely threatened, he has a meltdown, like an overreaction. And it's just like, he put himself in this position, you know? If these, like, some people figured out, like, the only way to, like, really ensure your success is through privacy, but, like, he, for instance, threw that all away. Lost $100 billion. And because, like, he accrued all this wealth throughout his life, even though he inherited, like, a whole bunch of it, he never really developed those charismatic social skills. I mean, you could look at basically, like, any billionaire and, like, just totally see how just fraudulent they are, and, like, it's just how empty and just just lack charisma and all this. It's really hard to like pin down exactly what I'm trying to say, but like generally speaking, billionaires are not the empathetic type at all.
Their relationships tend to be inauthentic because
Yes.
they are inauthentic.
Yes,
They
that's
don't
what I'm
want to
saying.
know you. They want to beat you.
Yes, they want to be.
They don't want to know you. They want to beat you.
They don't want to know you. They want to beat you.
However educated, successful, or well-traveled an elite East Coast WASP might be, after a couple decades of self-validation by way of living the corporate country club life, a person can't help but feel entitled to a certain degree of social deference, best exemplified by the childish outburst you'll hear from an elite East Coast WASPy 1%er if you dare disagree with them publicly. Try telling a white 60-something CEO you know better than they do. See how it goes. The social pressure to avoid any kind of intellectual, much less verbal conflict is so pronounced
Yes.
that they constantly and rightfully second guess whether the person to whom they are talking is really being themselves or just acting agreeable to
Right.
avoid conflict.
Right.
And the truth is that after years of this kind of relational fakeness, most 1%er WASPs enjoy occupying the position of social superiority. And that's
Yes.
actually the impetus for the show.
That's exactly what I was saying with the Elon Musk crap. I was just trying to spew out. Like, to hear like all this put into words so perfectly, even though like first listen, I was like just trying to grasp exactly where he was going with all this, and I didn't really understand the points being made. This is exactly what I feel. This is exactly what I believe, and you can see it. Like if you pay close enough attention to like the behavior of these elites, these billionaires and whatnot, and they all happen to be white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, you know, for the most part. Like I said, the framing is a little iffy, but like when it comes to like the elites, like that's what this is all focused on. That is like the fundamental focus of this.
To expose the WASPy worldview as nothing more than inauthentic, narcissistic social entitlement.
100%.
Let me say that again. The conservative,
That is it.
WASPy worldview, both East Coast and evangelical, is inauthentic, narcissistic, social entitlement.
Yep.
The ones who have money, especially those who are self-made, think that America belongs to them. We built this country, remember? And because of that narcissistic belief about what they mean to America's history, they also believe that they deserve to be treated as intellectually superior to those with less money, and at least as intellectually equal or superior to academics who have spent their entire lives studying a given subject.
Yeah, even though the overwhelming majority of the time, they are not. Intellectual superiority amongst the elite, give me a break.
Climate change, for example. They are neither enlightened nor worldly. They are decidedly ignorant because they are trapped in a social bubble of their own making, a social bubble of groupthink, which constricts their ability to see the ugly truths of the world at large. This is my empathy for them. And the emotional avenue for that empathy is
Yes.
forgiveness. More on that in the next episode. Partly to maintain my own sanity because I have a couple WASPs like the ones I'm describing in my life that are very important to me, I need to believe that most of these WASPs are not intentionally malicious people.
Sure.
Merely overgrown children who don't know any better.
Yes.
Underdeveloped human beings that, for whatever reason, either never received those crucial educational or experiential opportunities to transcend the ignorance of their upbringing, or they simply didn't take advantage of them when they arrived.
Yes.
This is my second Dieter decree. Just because someone looks like an adult doesn't mean they are one.
Yes.
However legitimate that explanation for their limited worldview might be, their effect on our society is far too great to concern myself with any kind of excuse for their selfishness. For the past 40 years of them taking so much for themselves
Yes.
and leaving so little for everyone else. I don't care if they didn't or don't know any better. The ugly truth is that their beliefs have hurt America far more than they have helped her.
Yes.
Concerning ourselves with their feelings is nothing more than a distraction that hinders tremendously the ability of the educated and enlightened members of society from forcing these detractors out of the way of progress. This firm but fair understanding of the consequences of their selfishness and stubbornness will justify the aggressive and unapologetic political strategy I propose in future episodes for how the left should challenge the right until it is cleansed of Trumpism.
Oh,
Then we
yes.
can talk. Contrary to what outsiders may think of the WASP's luxuriously comfortable lives, I can tell you from personal experience that the
Trump is like the absolute perfect example of this.
American WASP is actually a tragic figure, as difficult as that may be to believe.
It is tragic.
The fierce combination of blind faith Christianity and blind faith capitalism
Yep.
has not produced a tribe of happy people who look back on their lives with a sense of satisfaction.
Yeah.
More often than not, elite WASPs in particular spend most of the second half of their life complaining.
Yes.
The most mundane minutia most of us wouldn't think twice about. The mail comes too late. The neighbors play their music too loud. The news is too negative. But all that complaining is nothing more than a social smokescreen to hide their internal dissatisfaction with life. Their sadness. The net result of living a fear-driven life.
Mm-hmm.
By the time they reach the age of reflection, say 70, it's almost impossible for them to be truly happy because they've forgotten what true happiness is, if they ever knew. By that point, they've spent too much time and money pursuing possessions rather than experiences, that they're just not very interesting people. They're boring. They're not real. They're fake. They're not remotely creative. They're annoyingly competitive. They're not worldly because worldliness, just like creativity, requires empathy. They're not empathetic because they can't help but be preoccupied with what someone should do with their life as opposed to what someone wants to do with their life. I'll conclude this episode with my fourth and dear dichotomy, wants versus shoulds, or desires versus expectations.
Yeah.
My examination of WASP culture will demonstrate that the WASP worldview is the foundational culture of American conservatism. You'll soon learn that the conservatives' resentment for liberals does not derive as much from ideological differences as much as it does from conservatives' jealousy that liberals live freer lives than they do. Republicans like to promote themselves as the party of freedom. The left is where true freedom lives. Conservatives envy liberals' unapologetic pursuit of what they want rather than what society tells them they should want. We entertain, they complain. We party, they pray. We engage in relationships with people that are different from us. They actively avoid people that are different from them.
It really does say a lot. It really does. I think a lot of it does stem from jealousy because anyone to the left of them, like anyone to the left of the Republican Party, like for instance, are very much freer people, freer thinking, freer to express themselves however they want. They see the world as, you know, I don't know if nihilist is the best way to put it, but like, you can be whatever you want to be. You don't have to fit a mold. You don't have to adhere to rigid standards. And I think conservatives do view that in a jealous light to one extent or the other.
We don't allow blind faith patriotism to discourage us from criticizing America.
Yeah.
Their criticisms of America are directed at those that aren't native-born white Christians. Thank you for your attention on this very first episode. My hope is that this show will articulate a socio-political ideology from which the left can derive more effective rhetorical tools to help progressives win elections.
Yeah, this was brilliant. This is absolutely brilliant. This is a really good video.
Rather than Republicans and neoliberal corporate Democrats.
Yes.
As mentioned earlier, the next episode will introduce a segment called Drugstore Psychology, where I evaluate people's personalities and attempt to explain why they are the way they are according to demographic and psychographic data. The first edition of that segment will feature myself, focusing on the evolution of my own politics, to establish my credibility as an authority on WASP culture, which, by extension, informs modern-day conservatism, aka the Republican Party, aka the Trumpican Party.
Yeah, I've been actually meaning to do the exact same thing because my politics have evolved over time as well. I used to be an insufferable centrist, and I've alluded to this before in the past on my channel. I've never really gotten around to making like a full, like actual realized video about like my evolution of politics.
Another segment, War of Words, will discuss the connotations and denotations of particularly loaded words and cliches, such as blame, victim, politically correct, socialist, my right to an opinion, and my personal favorite, let's agree to disagree. You'll quickly realize that this war of words is nothing more than a rhetorical war between inevitable change and the status quo. In a similar spirit, the blame game will be another segment wherein yours truly unapologetically assigns blame to certain luminaries and political factions for present-day problems. If you're interested in understanding how today's insane world came to be, a detailed examination of the last 40 years of American history will reveal that one demographic more than any other merits a majority of the blame for the current condition of our country. Check out that episode to find out who it is. I doubt you'll be surprised. Finally, in the liberal capitalist segments, I will counter all of my complaining by proposing solutions to both policy and political problems facing the progressive left, such as the Dieter debt solution and Dieter's 10 points of truth. I'll also eventually add a segment to the show called For the Love of Hollywood, where I defend the entertainment business by arguing that it is actually a reflection of society, not an influencer of it. If you haven't realized it by now, I am a diehard progressive. And I want to conclude my inaugural episode by acknowledging other progressive YouTubers because their work has inspired me to create this show. I strongly suggest that if you liked me enough to make it all the way to the end of this episode, you'll very likely find their content insightful as well. Kyle Kulinski, Sam Cedar, David Packman, The Progressive Voice, The Humanist Report, The Rational National, all do great work.
It's so funny. Like, those are literally all my go-tos. It's remarkable, honestly. Like, we have the same taste, and I do recommend all those channels as well. I don't watch Packman as much as I used to, nearly, or Progressive Voice. But yeah, to add to those, the channel Beau of the Fifth Column is a channel that I don't miss a single video from. His content has been indispensable. Like, he is absolutely brilliant, and I love his work.
None of them are perfect, and they would all freely admit that.
Yes.
They are all, however, very informed progressive thinkers and add tremendous value to left-wing political discourse. You'll find my show to be a little different from theirs. I'm going to focus on explaining conservative cognition to support an argument for a new macro-level left-wing political strategy. A lot of people out there might think they understand the right, and some accurately speculate as to why Trumplicans are the way they are. But the difference between them and me is, as you'll find out in the next episode, I actually know why WASPs are the way they are because I am one of them. Only because of some profound educational experiences early on in my life was I able to transcend their oh-so-tempting fear-driven worldview so I could see it for what it was. And not only reject it outright, but work to mitigate its effect on American society.
Yeah.
Please like, share, subscribe, find me on Twitter, email me with questions and concerns you have about the world and what's going on and what you'd like me to talk about.
Yeah, it's really easy to buy into the fear because fear is basically all they sell. And it's really transparent if you take a step back and just see it for what it is. It's just a grift. It's just an excuse for clicks, you know. That's all it is.
Stay up to date on my videos, which will feature foundational long-form episodes like this, but more frequently I'll be offering comments on the day's current events, including this week's debate between Trump and Biden. Don't ever forget, you don't get change in America by asking nicely. Keep watching to find out why.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. Brilliant stuff. Yeah, I really like that. So yeah, the channel is called American WASP with Dealer McBusiness. Highly recommend subscribing to him, and look forward to checking out those other two videos as well. Yeah, if you like this, give it a like, leave a comment, let me know what you think of the video. Was it really good? Like, what do you think about the arguments being made? Because, like, for the most part, it's stuff that I've understood for a while now, and I've really wanted to, like, find the words to, like, express, but I couldn't find a way to do that. And I guess using the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant male is a good driver to, like, hone in on these points. And the point about inauthentic narcissistic social entitlement is just all encapsulating for that demographic, the elite, the billionaire, that ruling class, so to speak. Even wealthier middle class white men, like, that see everything as competition, that are void of empathy and have empty personalities because their entire life has just been trying to, like, please people that they otherwise detest, I guess you could say. Yeah, all of that is outlined very well in this. I'll see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching.